Broken Thing, Chapter 11. So, it was all settled. By the time Cara was out of the med bay, she was discharged back to the commander's quarters, as though nothing had changed. Her Spectre status and authority had never been revoked. Garrus had not allowed it. Her identity codes and authorization codes were changed, but all privileges intact. Her continuing mission was the same, and the Council trusted that she would dispose of assets assigned as she had in the past. Right. Treasonously and unreasonably and effectively. Check. With Thane still alive and publicity on the subject of her person boiling and seamy, she was not going to walk around on the Citadel and would make reports to the Council remotely. She'd done that in the past. None of the counselors demanded to see her in person. She was sure everyone was concerned that if she were to be out in person and recognizable, she'd be asked to autograph some Drell drawings from memory of what she'd worn, what she and Krios looked like together. She'd spawned a new fad in fashion and eyewitness-style art. Pass. At this point, she might sign them. She certainly wouldn't shoot anybody. She didn't think it would hurt to be offered evidence of her captivity. It had hurt enough. It couldn't hurt any more. And she was out, and that's all she needed. She felt so much distance from Dralafa that she was insulated somehow. Liara and Garrus were not. Garrus would have demanded to see her if he could, but now the subjects of demand and see in relationship to her were both poisoned permanently. He looked like every drop of blood had been drained from him. She knew that feeling. We may not have blood, but we have bone and can still stand upright. Maybe nothing flows, but something in us still resists gravity. Without our hearts, our spines rule. Russ spoke not a word to her about her return to command. Garrus had informed her that it was done. She had some new crew members to meet. She assumed Russ was again her babysitter, and that was fine. He'd lost the Ferox and his crew. Now he'd lost the Normandy. But he hadn't lost Garrus, and Shepard would do her best to make sure every sacrifice Russ made for the greater good had a commensurate, if not surpassing, sacrifice she would make. She had time to make up for, and debts to pay. She would finally have some privacy, and she could close her eyes and even hide under covers if she felt like it, which she would. She had 6 months of studying to catch up on, just like after she'd been dead when she had 2 years to catch up on. For now, she could hide in her quarters while the storm raged outside. While she was on the subject of hiding and not admitting to things, she missed the Drell language. She missed Drell food. She missed Drell poetry. She missed Drell fabric, at least in the form of bedding. Everything was scratchy and harsh. The food was terrible. No, she was not going to tell anyone. Man, do I miss brunch on the estate. No. No, she wouldn't. For now, she was not going to do a thing except to educate herself. She was not going to look at the news other than to take in damage at colony sites that were now abandoned. Garrus had not been happy when she had left him in the med bay and not returned. He'd known it was coming, of course. He was not going to be invited up to Commander Shepard's quarters. He did not attempt to contact her via Omnitool this time, to her deep relief. She would have played them once, only answered them if they were business-related. Now she was Shepard, and a Spectre would no longer answer to Cara in the same way she would not answer to Dralafa. They had both been true, might even remain true in some ways, but she would choose now what to answer to and what not. Garrus's voice and his heart and his everything would always make her heart leap, but she'd had 6 months to process the loss. She'd been chipped, but she'd been able to have some time alone, time to think, time to plan, time to know. He was just beginning his grieving, a fresh cut on top of her death, a numbing and then killing slice. I'm so sorry, Garrus. Russ had recruited some people she couldn't fathom, people she'd already rejected. Subject Zero, Jack, criminal. Samara the Justicar, lacking in personal morality, tied to an unexplained code that made Cara very nervous. She did not want these people on her squad. She'd even said so to Spectre Orviston, and he'd countermanded her judgment, which was fine when he was in charge. But he was no longer in charge. Morden was best suited to the lab. Ross was excellent for field work, but she did not want Jack or Samara. She didn't and would never have Garrus. She had Caden still. That was a bonus, but she needed better people, and fast, now that her mission was further away, and the losses piling up, odds turning against her every day. She paced her quarters, a luxury. She didn't speak aloud, never would again, but pacing. Pacing she could do at no cost, kinetic expression of her potential will. Speaking of potential will, she'd suppressed the urge 100 times, but she finally contacted Dr. Itran. She'd set her translator to not filter the drill language. She wanted to hear it. She wanted to speak it. She wanted to thank the man again, and not from a med bay bed. She'd done some research on his life, and she was more and more convinced that he'd be an asset. He was the last thing in her world that glowed. She was used to text and usually would have done that, but she wanted to hear him, wanted to be able to speak Drell. Months of not being able to talk to anybody except her captor could do that to a person. Hello, Dr. Itran? Is this a bad time? Commander Shepard, my time is yours. He was glowing and handsome, and he sounded so good. Thank you. I wanted to say thank you again. I also wanted to ask if you had reconsidered my offer. You are ever welcome, Commander Shepard. Please call me Lau. I'm certain I could not. I'm certain you could, both in terms of calling me Lau and reconsidering my offer. He blinked at her, and she smiled. She said, If you will forgive the intrusion, please. I'm afraid I did some research on your background. You're not only a medical doctor, but you provided counseling for slavery survivors. He was silent. She said, I am a slavery survivor. He said quietly, As am I. Lal. Her smile softened from determined to grateful. You're the only person that knows my circumstances, the only person I feel I could trust, talk to about it. Please, it seems it's not metaphoric that I can't thank you enough. I don't seem to be able to thank you enough. My freedom keeps recurring to me as a new thing, a precious thing, and I want to give thanks. I feel like hanging up and calling you again and saying it again, and that is obnoxious. Had I been able to tell you that every day for 8 years, I would have. Okay, so you do understand. That's what I need right now. I don't know if I'll ever be able to stop saying it. If you could give me your schedule, I'll try not to interrupt too much. Just a daily call where I say, thank you for saving my life and my sanity and my purpose, and then I'll wait until I can call you again. He almost smiled. Almost. Maybe someday she'd get him to smile. He said, "If that is the form your affirmation of life wishes to take, I will certainly support that, if you would permit me to give my own thanks." You know, I've always found affirmations to be mostly useless, except when they aren't. Perhaps prayer, then. I don't know who to pray to. Then perhaps we will speak to each other. Perhaps I will listen. Perhaps I will understand. That sounds a little crazy, huh? Lol. It is not crazy. If you wish to be heard, if you wish to speak to me, I will be here for you. Would you consider being here for me? On the Normandy? I don't want to travel to the Citadel. Of course. Is there anything from the Citadel that I can bring to you, other than my presence and the willingness to listen to your affirmations that are not affirmations, and your prayers that are not prayers, to your words that are useless, except when they are not? She smiled. You know, I think you can. Do you know of a good Drell bakery? I do. Please, 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 bring me some Gallifin tarts. As you wish. It took a little while, a day, but Karen did show up. She'd authorized his arrival, but hadn't been able to get a commitment on when. She'd just call him again. Instead, he was there, exactly 24 hours after she'd called him. Presenting himself to her cabin, he said, "Thank you for your invitation. I thought I would spare you calling me." It wasn't a smile, exactly, but it was welcome. He was welcome. She gestured him inside. He brought in 2 packages. He unpacked Gallifin tarts and a carafe of silica juice. Then he solemnly presented her with a blanket of drell cloth, soft and warm, the equal of the one he'd set across her lap. It was a shade of green, the color of Cara's eyes. Then he did smile and say, "To replace the one I ruined." The one she ruined by bleeding all over it after he'd looked only at her face, after his hand had slid down from her waist to her hip, after his hand had cradled the back of her neck while he was setting her free. She felt like crying, but didn't. Instead, she sat, spread the cloth over her lap with fingertips on the rich fabric, ceremoniously took a tart and a sip of juice, and said, "I shouldn't. Really, I should not love these as much, but there are some things." He took his own tart and finished her sentence. "Some things we love, despite the context. One of my owners took me to Thessia. I'm afraid there I developed some bad habits." She tilted her head, and he said, as though reluctant to disclose such a crime, "There is a stew. Wary stew." "You ate meat?" He shook his head and said sadly, "I did. My heritage and guidance lost with one bite." "Even I don't eat meat." "You are not Drell." "True. It's possible I also don't make a very good human. Was the stew worth it?" "Oh, yes. If I were to lose my heritage and guidance in one bowl, that would be the bowl." She took another bite of delicate pastry and fruit in a gel texture and nodded. "As someone who has lost her own heritage and guidance, I salute you. You do not seem lost." "I'm good at seeming, as am I." "What did you lose that you miss, but you would not seek again?" She should lie to him, but she didn't want to. Remembering her parents, remembering Mindwar. Commander Shepard shouldn't, but Commander Shepard was sick of what she should and shouldn't remember. She should probably say since her heritage was lost, she couldn't remember it, but instead she said, I miss insulation. She smiled at the blanket, made sure there was no fruit gel on her fingers, and pulled it up higher. Metaphorical and literal. In the case of the blanket, that I would seek, and thank you again. It's lovely. Metaphorical insulation means that I got to pick and choose what I drew into my heart, what I drew into my reality. I found the beautiful things and some of the shadows of the ugly, but that was knowledge, not experience. I could filter and interpret all of my knowledge, categorize and combine, and I loved that so much. I wasn't even hungry for experience enough to reach for it. I'd imagined going to Thessia or the Citadel, but I hadn't any plans, just dreams. And that's what they were, dreams. Then I began a phase of my life that was less about knowledge and more about experience. I wasn't insulated anymore. Life was cold and harsh and lonely. That experience connected me to others that were living with cold and harsh and lonely, all the other people that had lost their insulation, lost their protection, many who'd never had it in the first place. I recognized my blessings. I'm sure I sound like a hypocrite here under a lovely blanket eating pastry, saying I don't seek insulation, but I value experience now and can't go back to who I was. I don't seek insulation to the extent I once did, not knowing the difference. And what did you lose that you miss and would seek again? The company of those who know the cold and harsh and lonely. And you wish to insulate them. Yes, I didn't say it made sense. I prefer just enough insulation, just enough experience. Some experiences once gained dictate the pursuit of other experiences. Yes, there is no definite formula for recovery. Some never stumble upon their own. Some require retreat into full insulation and must remain there until they wish to venture out. Some never choose to venture out. I'm going to be venturing. What did you do? I am not certain I have discovered what my formula for recovery would ultimately be. I was trained while I was captive. I was trained to be a medic. I was trained as a bodyguard. I was trained for pleasure. I had several owners over a series of years, some who treated me well, some who did not. I have tried to take what positive gains I could take with me. I can listen. I can fight. I can protect. My other training I found not as useful in recovery. I extended training as a medic to training as a doctor. I extended training as a bodyguard to training in combat. I attempted to learn to apply what I could reclaim as my own, separating as you would define them, pure knowledge from pure experience. In the end, however, I am not a self-made man, and I cling to my training as a medic because it cost me years of my life. I cling to being a doctor as an extension. I cling to much of my training because to abandon it would be to abandon the man who suffered. I wish to reach back into the past and reassure that man that what he endured was worth it. But it wasn't. No, it was not. But what remains is that I did not abandon myself. I carry that man each day. To set aside healing would be to set aside healing. Some people embrace healing as a calling because they wish to reach out and save others. I embraced healing as something selfish. If I spend enough time, enough experience helping and healing, perhaps I will one day be helped and healed. You sound like you don't think you will be. I was a broken man in many ways. I am still in many ways. Different ways. Ways that I did not anticipate and could not halt. Perhaps I carry my suffering and those of others in the way you speak of experience connecting you to others. In my case, I fear it is more selfish, and I connect in most cases to myself and not to others. I feel I should apologize for pressuring you to connect. Please do not. I feel I should apologize for being so very bad at it. Please do not. We have established that I am a terrible counselor, and you have no intention of enacting any of the advice that I may potentially give you, as your course of action and trajectory of your life is already determined. Basically, yes. Acceptable. There's juice, but no stew. I can fix that. You do not wish to travel to the Citadel. I could have them deliver. I should not have told you. Too late now. I have not reconsidered your offer to serve as crew, I am afraid. You should. I am a terrible counselor. I would make an equally ineffective whatever you intend. You don't know what I intend. Forgive me, perhaps I do. I believe it is entirely possible that you will contact me each day and ask me if I have yet changed my mind. Will that work? You do not ask if it would be a good thing to have it work. I have faith. Why? Because you're the person who walked into a room that I was in and decided you would help me. He smiled, a real smile, and he said, And if I regret that decision, Lal? Too late now, as I suspected. You should really stay on board the Normandy. I must decline. Must? Why? First and foremost, Commander Shepard. Lal, Commander Shepard. The risks of death in your presence are very high. Are you afraid of dying? Yes. Really? Perhaps not, but nor do I seek it full tilt. Maybe half tilt? What if I offer you a half tilt position? He shook his head and said, I am not asking you what a half tilt position is. Sounds kind of dirty now that I think about it. You should cease thinking about it. I don't think I'm going to. Quarter tilt? No, thank you. I've got no zero tilt positions available. Excellent. I will not be accepting one of those either. What do you want to do with your life, Kegarin? That is no longer my name. What's your new name? I do not believe I'm going to tell you. I'm a specter. I can find out. You didn't answer what it was you wanted to do with your life, whatever your name is. My new name is Varen. Varen what? Varen Celetis. That sounds suspiciously Taurian. I thought so myself, but apparently it is of Drell origin. In any case, I can retain Rin. That is what I was most often called in my life. May I call you Rin? Yes, you may. All right then. Rin, what do you want to do with your life? I believe be insulated would be an acceptable response. Want the blanket back? No, Lal. It is yours. Want a bowl of stew? Yes, but I would not eat it. So I know what you don't want to do with your life. You long for stew you can't eat. It is perhaps a tired and common narrative. She didn't think he was tired or common. You sure you won't just surprise me and say yes? I've got a lot of stuff to do, Rin. Important stuff. I can't be chasing after a reluctant Drell every day. I am relieved to hear it. That doesn't mean I won't. That is flattering and unfortunate. I'm going to go with flattering. Here's my bottom line. Teasing aside, I found your observational skills, problem-solving skills, resolve, and execution to be admirable and something I could use on my side, which is selfish, I know, but I ask people to die for me a lot. How many of them tell you no? See, that's the thing. You're my first. Everyone else says yes. Then ask them, lol. I don't necessarily find their observational skills, problem-solving skills, resolve, and execution to be up to my standards. If it is resolve you're lacking, I've got plenty of that. I do not believe I needed to be told that. Oh, right. Repetitive human. I apologize. He smiled. Do not, Lal. The fault is in me, not in you. Self-preservation is not a fault. It is not self-preservation. Then what? I do not believe I am going to tell you. Man of mystery. Man of not self-preservation. Tell you what, I'll stop asking. Come back tomorrow, please? I am free to go? Yes, Rin. You'll always be free to go. Just consider being free to stay. I told you I was lonely, that I needed someone to talk to. You've been that person for today. Will you be that person for tomorrow? I would be honored. Thank you.